Okay, episode 6 is in the bag. Are you ready to start talking about West Clare? Because lads, if you weren't planning on moving to there before now, you should at least be for the last 20 minutes. Okay, before I start going into too much detail about the houses I picked for Stef and Nick, this is one of them shows where I really need to talk about why I picked the part of West Clare that I did for them. Clare can be a little bit pricey. I mean, if you look at Clare as a county, the bottom of it, you have Loop Head that kind of juts out into the sea. And then as you go up further, you've got places like Lahinch and Doolin, you know, the Cliffs of Moher, up looking out over the Aran Islands. As you get up towards the top of Clare, it's not the least expensive place to buy a house. It's very touristy. This is prime real estate, guys. It really is one of the most popular parts of Ireland to go and have a holiday or have a weekend away. So West Clare is not necessarily going to be the cheapest place in that respect. Loophead for me is one of those places though that I'd been to a couple of years ago. I mean, it's so rural. It's still relatively untouched by tourism. Now, I'm not saying that people who are in the know don't go out there, but the level of tourism out there is a lot less, I think, and the industry and how people work and how people live is a lot less affected by tourism. So when you're out on Loop Head, it's a lot of like dairy farms and stuff like that, and very agricultural area and very quiet, small communities. And I think when you're wanting to move to the west of Ireland, it's a lot less daunting, I think, to move into somewhere that's not just a tourist trap. It's nice to move somewhere that has nice established communities that are there all year round. That's one of the main reasons I picked Loop Head. Every house is within somewhat of a shooting distance of Loop Head. And just for that reason alone, because it's affordable, it's still a taste of what Clare was like years and years ago. And I think for anyone wanting to live in a seasidey part of rural Ireland, it is breathtaking. Okay, so the first house that I wanted to talk about was the little cottage with the potential subsidence, I suppose, in Knocknagaroon. Now, this was the furthest one out on Loop Head that I brought the couple to. It's one of those places where you were standing at the front door looking out and you could see a view across the peninsula to the sea on the other side. But then from the plot to the side of the house, you could see out over the cliffs on their side of the peninsula. It was just amazing. I mean, it was so amazing. The house itself wasn't in particularly brilliant condition with that little bit of subsidence or whatever that was that Kieran was talking about. But they had €80,000 left in their budget to get that house rectified. The house itself on the inside wasn't in massively bad condition. It didn't have huge amounts of water coming in. It had been relatively sealed up from the elements. It had a bathroom. It had water, like things like that are huge benefits when you're buying a house in rural Ireland that is maybe hasn't been lived in for 10 or 15 years. I loved it. I really thought that it was one of them places that the views in it would kind of make up for having to do that little bit of work when it came to the structural side of things. Once that subsidence thing was fixed, you were left with a really nice little cottage with great views. It had a massive plot too. And the plot was on, I suppose when you're standing in front of the house looking at the house, the plot was on the left. So you had this almost an acre from what I can remember on the left-hand side of the house. So although you didn't get the farm buildings to the right, you had this huge amount of space. And that's a really, really important thing for me, especially when you're buying somewhere that used to be a running farm. If the farmyard doesn't come with the farmhouse, you need to make sure that you have enough land in the sale that you don't feel like you've got people in your backyard the whole time. So having that acre on the left-hand side was just magic. And I mean, the house on the inside, even the presses and the furniture, if I could have kept them myself, I would have been delighted. So lovely little house, great price, and really far out on Loop Head, which for me was actually a bonus. Okay, so next we went up to see that little cottage in Doonbeg. Now, it wasn't really on Loop Head, I know it was just a little bit up from it, but still in that general area that's still quite affordable for West Clare. So let's talk about that house, lads. Right, it was amazing. I mean, it wasn't anything spectacular on the outside when I saw it online, so much so that it's been on my radar for a couple of months, and I've always kind of went, will I put it up on the feed? I don't know. I mean, I didn't think it was anything particularly special. I thought there was maybe a good chance it was a little bit of a bungalow or something, and looking back on it now, it's just that it was so well kept was what it was. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty of that house, right? It had a bathroom, and a quite functional bathroom too. It wasn't like I don't think I could use that for a week because it needs to be soaked and cleaned. I mean, this was a nice little place on the inside. It was clean on the inside. It had the flagstone floors. Is it weird that I talked about the toilet first? Is that weird? I think that's like such a testament to people who buy derelict houses, is that you're like, is there a toilet? Okay, so let's get past the toilet and the plumbing. Flagstones. Never seen flagstones that nice in my life before. Inglenook. Oh my gosh, that fireplace was just the most beautiful thing. It was so similar to what mine was like when I found it behind the wall here in this actual room. I'll show you someday. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. And it had the crane in it. And you know, when I was organising to go out and see that house, the agent, who was fantastic, by the way, was like, the guy who owns the house actually took the crane out to mend it, and he'll get it put back in for you so that the people who want to see it can see what it used to look like. And I mean, this whole house shows that whoever owns this house is minding it well. Whoever owned it in the past minded it well. I mean, the outbuildings are in beautiful condition. The outside of the house is kept beautiful. You know, for a house that's not lived in, it doesn't look like that. The roof was good. Just so many really, really great things about that place that weren't really obvious online. I mean, they weren't the kind of things that jumped out at you when you were looking at it on the listing. But yet when you got there, it just, everything that was in the listing was there, but just looked 10 million times better. Oh, it was just so gorgeous. And it was sunny. I don't know if that came across that much in the taping, but it was so sunny. And cottages are not that sunny. I mean, it's just not the way they are. So it had like windows in the back in front of that kitchen, and the day I was there filming, the sun was just streaming in. I mean, can you imagine a half door opened out on that little enclosed yard at the back, and chickens and babies and everything? Oh, just the dream, really. And I mean, another thing I really liked about that place for them was, a lot of the time when you find cottages and you find farmhouses and stuff like that, there's always a compromise. You know, maybe the farmyard's been taken away and kept by the person that owned the land. Maybe, you know, it's overlooked, or there's someone just after building right beside you, or there's, you know, something that just makes it a little bit more inconvenient for you to live there. This place had none of those things. I mean, the plot was big. The plot was, an acre? On the left hand side. The farm buildings were on the right, and they were in fantastic condition. Some of them had flagstone floors, some of them had cobbled floors. I mean, great roofs on them, absolutely beautiful. You had the little enclosed yard at the back that opened out then down onto the plot, and a little garden at the front. It was just perfect. You were in the middle of your own little plot, and you weren't feeling like you were stuck up against someone else's farmyard or up against someone else's house. It was just your own little bubble. And that's the thing with Lough Isle that drew me to this place as well. I mean, I don't have a lot of space. I have an acre, and I'm in the side of a mountain, so it's quite kind of terraced and hilly and all over the place, but it's at both sides of my house kind of equally, and to the back. So I feel like I have my own little bit of privacy in the yard, and I think that's something that is just so rare nowadays with these houses, because people just tend to split them off from their farmyards so much. I mean, someone could have so easily came in here and sold the farm buildings separately, kept the farm buildings for themselves, gave you like a sliver of land beside the house and kept the rest of the plot for themselves, and they didn't. And it just shows how taking that tiny little bit of care with a place when you're selling it, and not absolutely scalping it, not absolutely cutting it down to no ground outside for the new buyer. It's just an absolutely wonderful thing. This house, when I was leaving it, I just didn't want to go. Like, I really didn't. I knew there was a good chance that I was never going to be back inside it again, which broke my heart to begin with. But also because I was the person putting it out there, and I was the person showing it to the world, I was so worried I was the one that was going to be responsible for someone coming in and knocking it down and building a house on it, you know, because it's near Doonbeg or something, and it just wouldn't be there anymore. So if one of you guys save this house, keep everything in it the way it is. It's just absolutely precious. It's perfect. And, you know, sympathetically restore it. Do the things that need to be done. Don't do anything else. If you're putting in mod cons, you know, keep them tucked away in the little rooms that haven't as much character in them. And if you're going to be upgrading stuff, do it sympathetically. Get advice from people who know what they're doing. Get advice from a conservation engineer or something who really, really knows exactly what needs to be done to a building like this. And, you know, even if you don't have the money to do everything they suggest, which does happen, and you will get a little bit afraid and you'll be like, oh, I'm not going to be able to afford any of that. You're at least starting from a better point then than you are if you actually just don't listen to an experienced person at all. It's really important with these houses that the person you ask for advice knows what they're talking about and is a specialist in these type of houses, and then move forward and decide what you can afford to do now, what you can afford to do later, and your little house will be so much the better for it. Our countryside will be so much the better for it. God, I'm on a rant now. I'm sorry. I just love this house. I was really crying leaving it. I just love it. I was crying. There were tears. I'm sorry. Please save this house. Okay, the farmhouse in Carrigaholt that I picked. There was a couple of reasons why I picked this for Stef and Nick. And I think it's really, really important. We've only been talking about this a couple of minutes ago, but this comes up a lot for me when I'm looking for houses. This was one of those houses where the farmyard was split away from the house before it was sold. Now, at the moment, the farmyard is functioning. It's a dairy farm and there are cattle coming in and out. And that little house, because it's there and it's quite close to the farmyard, it just hasn't sold. And it's such a shame because it has fantastic views out over the ocean, fantastic views of the lighthouse. It was in a great place. It had a huge plot with it at the other side. So there was potential there to kind of change the orientation of how you lived in the outside space of the house. And I think it's a great example to talk through with you guys even now to show you what can be done with a house like that, where you find the house of your dreams, or maybe it's not the house of your dreams, but it's the only house you can afford in your area, and someone's went and kept the farmyard, and all you're looking at is this like little cottage that's like sticking right up again a big set of cow sheds that you don't own anymore. So what do? You have to try and make it work. Okay, you just have to. If Stef and Nick had to come to Clare and that was the only property they had within their budget, they would have to make it work, or they'd at least have to get their thinking caps on and try and make it work. So for me, what I was thinking was, we had that acre of a plot on the far side, and I was thinking, right, the road kind of swept down around by the plot the whole way. So you could very easily have opened an entrance down on that far road and led it up to the gable end of the house, planted a little boundary down between yourself and the cow sheds, and just kind of orientated your life slightly more towards the sea than the road where the cow sheds were. And I think even doing something as simple as that wouldn't be a massive task. I mean, it's landscaping. If landscaping is the only thing you have to do to make your house perfect, you're not on the back foot at all compared to the rest of us, you know. And that house was solid. Like, it didn't have a septic tank, it didn't have indoor plumbing, but it had power. And, you know, putting those other things in are things most of us have to deal with in rural Ireland anyway. So it wasn't adding this massive premium onto the house. And what you would have had at the end of it would have been a place that had just fantastic views, fantastic outside space. And people would look at it in a couple of years' time and go, how did you get this little gem for under €100,000? And all you can say is, look, I actually thought outside the box because I had to. Because if not, this little house just was not going to be saved. And it was going to just go to ruin over the next however many years. And it's just going to be nothing. It's just going to be a little pile of stones in the back of a set of farm buildings. And like, I mean, that's a mortal sin if that happens. So there you have it. 6 episodes down, season 1 of Cheap Irish Homes finished. Ooh. I'm so delighted that everyone liked it. I'm so glad that you all shared it with your friends and family. Thank you for talking about it with people. Thank you anybody that got in touch with me to tell me that you enjoyed it or that it gave you renewed hope. That's what this was all about. That's what the feed is all about. And I just think we just need to keep going strong now. We need to keep looking at houses online. We need to keep buying cheap houses in rural Ireland, moving out and making these communities more vibrant again, saving our history when it comes to architecture, and just overall bringing life back into the parts of Ireland that really, really deserve it. So the videos are going to keep coming. The posts are going to keep coming. The cheap houses, as long as they're out there, are going to keep getting put up on my feed and sent out in my digest. So we'll just keep trucking on, and I will see you tomorrow morning with a brand new cheap Irish house. Bye.